Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We begin with Allah's blessed name. We praise Him and we glorify Him as He ought to be praised and glorified. And we pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers, and in particular on the last of them all, the blessed Prophet Muhammad. Allah's blessings be upon him as we greet you from the studios of the Islamic Broadcasting Network here in my native island of Trinidad with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We apologize for the delay in the start of today's broadcast because of some technical difficulties, but we have a lovely surprise for you this morning. Just wait for a minute for that surprise. It is the 8th day of the month of Shaban, so we have about 3 weeks left before the blessed month of Ramadan, when we will be fasting for the whole month. But in addition to that, you have to prepare yourself to recite the whole Quran from cover to cover, of course in Arabic, because this is the practice of our Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him. Very few announcements this morning before we have the surprise for you. Stay with us. And that is that number one, I gave my telephone number only for those here in Trinidad who wanted to contact me. But I'm getting calls from abroad. Please don't call me from abroad. Send me an email. Number two, the offer of autograph complete sets of my books, we can no longer take any more orders. If you send your orders now, you'll have to be put in line, and when I come back from my travels in September, inshallah, we can then attend to your orders. So no more orders for complete sets of books. Please remember, if you are in London or around London, that we have the launch of my new book, Constantinople in the Quran, and Constantinople has come back to center stage now. Yes, Constantinople has come back to center stage in the affairs of the world. And my book, by Allah's kindness, has come out at the very correct time. It's the first time anybody, I believe, has written on the subject of Constantinople in the Quran, and we are going to launch that book in London on the 27th of April. Do please register for that program and invite our Orthodox Christian brothers. There are so many of them in London to come and attend. And then the next day, 28th, we're going to be, there you are, there's the book on the screen. On the 28th, we're going to be in Birmingham. And then there are 2 more lectures in London. You'll find the information on my YouTube channel. And then we have the month of Ramadan, where I will be having no lectures. But after Ramadan, if you're in Malaysia, look for the confirmation of lectures at Masjid Umar ibn al-Khattab in Damansara Heights, and Masjid al-Ihsan in Subang Jaya, and maybe one or two more lectures. This will be immediately after Eid al-Fitr, or what you call Hari Raya. And then after that, we'll be in Indonesia for 1 week. I intend to visit Jember, so from Surabaya to Jember. And then we go to Iran for 1 week. And then if you are in Belgium, good news for you, we're coming to Belgium, inshallah. Today, we have a wonderful surprise. I am very excited. I want to introduce you to a distinguished scholar. He's also Trinidadian like myself, born in Trinidad. We are fortunate to be born in this island, a blessed island of Trinidad. And we're just 9 miles away from Venezuela. Venezuela, which is at the center of the stage of the world today. I want to introduce you to Dr. Kirk Meighoo. I had an interview with him, but we used my laptop, and the quality was not good at all, and IBN refused to broadcast that. So IBN has said, come and do it here at the studio, and today we have Dr. Meighoo. Dr. Meighoo, welcome to IBN, and welcome to the viewing audience here in Trinidad, and also welcome to all those around the world who eventually view this session.
Well, thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum to you and also to your viewers. It's a pleasure to be here. It was a great, we only met over the internet, was it a month ago? Not even a month ago, perhaps? Yeah. And there's definitely a connection there.
Dr. Meighoo traveled a long road on the road of religion, but now Dr. Meighoo is firmly happy in the Hindu religion, but yet he greets me with Assalamu alaikum, which is a very good sign. And we are going to have an interview today. This is live. And next week, it'll be recorded and it'll be broadcast next week. I won't be with you here next week, so it'll be a pre-recorded broadcast. And then after that, I'll be traveling. So Dr. Meighoo, welcome once again. And we are now ready to start our program.
Thank you. Well, there are so many things to talk about, and how I discovered you through my own research. And we had a really great conversation online. And instead of trying to replicate it, because there were some moments there that we just cannot replicate, I want to take, I suppose, what I've learned, perhaps what we've learned together from each other, and explore it further, and to get into deeper questions of epistemology. Now, epistemology, for people who don't know in the audience, it's sort of the science of knowing, or the philosophy of knowledge. Where does knowledge come from? Well, how do you know what is true and what is not true? How do you know what is real and what is not real? And you definitely are coming from a perspective that is not the same as mine in terms of, I don't come from an Islamic eschatological perspective. In fact, I didn't even know about one, and I don't know the details of it. But in doing my research, when you go on YouTube, on Google, in the things I was looking for, I kept coming across your research, and I found you were doing research and coming to the same conclusions as myself, or similar, and then you were going more in depth in some areas, and I just found it fascinating. It seemed like we were on the same path. But could you explain to me, to the audience, about Islamic eschatology, about the way you have understood the reasoning behind history then?
Dr. Meighoo, I am happy that we begin our conversation with this subject, because any Hindu who is viewing this program, any Christian who is viewing this program, would know that he has the same thing that we as Muslims have in epistemology. And epistemology, or that branch of knowledge which studies knowledge and the sources of knowledge, epistemology is an integral a strategically important and indispensable part of eschatology. And eschatology is normally defined as the branch of knowledge which studies the signs of the last day. But I, as a student of international relations, I have redefined it, and I call it that branch of religious knowledge which offers a roadmap to the end of history. Now back to epistemology, or the branch of knowledge which studies knowledge. My Hindu brother, who is a scholar, would say that we see with two eyes, not with one. My Christian brother would say the same thing. We see with two eyes and not with one. The Buddhist would say the same thing. The Jew will emphatically insist that the Muslim says the same thing that he says. The Quran speaks about those who have eyes and yet cannot see. They're usually politicians. they have eyes and they can't see. They have ears and they can't hear. They have hearts and they don't understand. They're just like cattle. Meaning that there is an epistemology out there known as the secular epistemology. I prefer to call a spade a spade. It's the godless epistemology. And that is that knowledge comes only from external observation, experimentation, and rational inquiry. If knowledge comes from any other source, it belongs to Disneyland, or in Trinidad we call it the Labas. But we say something else in the religious way of life. The Hindu will agree with me. The Christian, the Jew, the Buddhist will agree with me that in addition to knowledge which is externally acquired, there is that knowledge which is internally received. Usually received through something called a lovely word in the English language, absolutely lovely. It's a combination of the word in and the word sight, insight. And this knowledge which comes to us, which is received internally, is a gift from above. But if you don't plant, you can't reap. The only one, Dr. Meighoo, who reaps without planting is the banker. Only the banker, because he's reaping what others are planting.
Correct.
That's right. So you have to do your homework. You got to burn the midnight oil. You got to use external knowledge before knowledge can be received internally. And when you see what otherwise cannot be seen, you're now able to understand the world that's coming tomorrow.
Yeah, and you know, the idea you have that you espouse of the inner eye, the insight, and I mean certainly the Christians have it in their own way, in their own terminology. The Hindus have it, you know, with the third eye and these sorts of things, and it's very important. You make a very important point about the godless epistemology, which is what it is. It's materialism. It's been around for a very long time, whether it be Aristotle, I think definitively debunked it in, what was it, when he wrote the 4th century or so. And the Hindus have debunked it. Materialism has been around for a very, very long time. The modern scientific West believes that it is something new and progressive, and it is not. It is an old ideology that has been debunked. And I like to challenge these so-called secularist political scientists who think that they are... It's a myth that they are saying that they go on evidence, on science, because there is a story that they push. And it does ultimately derive from a Christian eschatology. But the way, let's say if we look at CNN, there is an epic story behind it. And basically they see it as America is the chosen people, essentially. They see themselves as the chosen people, and that history is moving on a line when there was a time of darkness and superstition and oppression, and then the light of reason freedom and democracy is slowly illuminating the world. And America is a chosen people with the special mission to bring that light to the world. And that essentially underlies all their narratives that you will see on CNN and Fox. CNN might be the left-wing version of it, Fox might be the right-wing version of it, but it is that narrative. They believe they are chosen to progress history. That's where the term progressive comes from. And if you look at the BBC and maybe Europe, they might not have that idea about America having that, but they see the West. You know, when they go back to the ancient Greeks, they claim the Hellenic tradition as their own. I dispute that, but they claim that they are derived from the Greeks, and when the Greeks were there, they were, you know, the light of science and rationality, and the Persians were, you know, oppressive, you know, people of superstition, and that the Western Europeans are carrying the light of the Greeks in spreading this knowledge. So, and they are pushing this view of history, which I disagree with, and I would imagine you disagree with as well. And in your eschatology, it's coming from what? A reading? You take it as a reading of the Quran, that these things are contained within the Quran, and that's what you do. You study, because I'm trying to figure out your thought process. You study current events, and then you look at what the Quran says, and it meshes. Is that how you do it?
Well, first of all, it is very clear to me, and I'm sure to my viewing audience as well. You also see with two eyes, Dr. Meighoo, because you're able to penetrate the reality of the world today. And it is a reality in which the United States of America leads the Western world, and they are an arrogant people. It's not just the arrogance of claiming to be the chosen people of the Lord God, or the chosen people of the historical process with a mission of civilizing the world, but also the additional aspect of their arrogance is that they believe that they have a birthright of ruling the world. They need, all of mankind must bend their knees before them and submit to them. And that is arrogance.
Yes.
And we see the evidence of this, and I'm sure you'll want to explore this with us. And our listening audience and viewing audience are going to be fascinated by this encounter between political science and eschatology. I don't think it has ever happened before, certainly not in my lifetime. So if you're in India and you're viewing this, if you're in Bangladesh or in Indonesia, in Malaysia or in Pakistan, and you're viewing this, you're going to be fascinated by this encounter between political scientists and an eschatologist, and it can only happen in Trinidad. It can only happen in Trinidad.
You know, I want to say that even in the American situation that we're talking about, the position of America, I believe that the founding fathers of America, their vision has been betrayed, that they explicitly were against the idea of building an American empire. The state that the United States finds itself in of permanent war was not something that they supported at all. Congress was supposed to authorize any military intervention and war, which has not been done since World War II in the United States. So there has been a process of subversion, and I believe that the true authentic spirit of the United States has been stifled and muffled by the State Department, by forces that within the United States there are people who recognize that government are against them, the people of the United States as well, and that forces that have taken over the United States foreign policy is against the spirit of the United States itself, because I do believe that they do have a they had a positive role to play at one time in history, and that there is a battle within the United States as well to try to change that.
Well, I want to deepen the discussion now to suggest to you that there are systemic forces at work in which you see the state being taken for a ride and hidden forces within the state taking over the state. And there are anti-systemic forces at work in the world today. And whenever you see a state or a people who refuse to bend their knees to the oppressors of the world, these are called the rogue states. This is the anti-systemic force in the world. And at the heart of this is Israel. Because when you bend your knees to the West, you're actually bending your knees to the Zionist Jewish state of Israel. And when you refuse to bend your knee, they consider you to be a threat. Mm-hmm. And so from our eschatological perspective, and this is in my book, which I wrote 20 years ago, my bestseller, Jerusalem in the Quran, that at the heart of international relations today, and for the last few centuries, is the status of the Holy Land. They don't call it the Holy Land. They call it Israel, and others call it Palestine. But in the Quran, it is referred to as the Holy Land. That the Lord God had established a model state in the Holy Land and had caused that holy state to become a ruling state in the world under the rulership of the prophets, kings, David, Nabi Dawood alayhi salam, and Solomon, Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam. And that holy state collapsed immediately after Solomon died, and that's another story, an interesting story in the Quran. And history cannot end without that holy state being revived, restored, and once again ruling the world. The Jew believes that, the Christian believes that, mm-hmm. The Muslim believes that. I am not familiar with Hindu eschatology. I'm not familiar with Buddhist eschatology, but you got homework to do that. Mm-hmm. Maybe you should do that. But the Christian and the Muslim share something which the Jew does not share with us, and that is that before the true Messiah returns, that is Jesus, the son of Mary, the Virgin Mary, to rule the world from that holy state in Jerusalem, before that happens, history cannot end without that happening. Before that happens, that there'll be an impostor who would seek to impersonate the true Messiah. Mm-hmm. And this messianic interpretation of the historical process and the end of history, this messianic interpretation explains what is happening today, that the Western world is acting on behalf of that impostor. That the state of Israel, which has today been restored after 2,000 years, is an impostor state. The Christian and the Muslim both agree with that. It is an oppressor state. And history is ending with a division between those who stand with the oppressor. And Dr. Meighoo, it is so sad for me to say that the present government of India is betraying the Hindu religion and standing with the oppressor. Those who stand with the oppressor and support the oppressor in Venezuela to try to overthrow that government, in Russia because Russia refuses to bend its knee, in China because China refuses to bend its knee, in Iran because Iran refuses to bend its knee, in Korea because Korea refuses to bend its knee. They all constitute now one force in international relations, or in the language of Islam, they're one Jamaat.
Well, you know, you mentioned the India situation, the India election is going on right now. And it's very interesting that the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, had made a statement that he believes that Modi winning the elections would advance the peace process between India and Pakistan and settling the Jammu and Kashmir question and moving towards greater peace. I found that a very interesting statement. I agree with it, in fact. I think the last time when the BJP were in power with Vajpayee, more progress was made than any time, and I believe Imran Khan made that same point. But you perhaps disagree with that?
Well, Imran Khan, or I call him the captain of the team, probably has information that I don't have. I recognize the present Indian government to be a warmongering government. And what happened in, I don't know if it's called Pulwana or something.
Yes.
Yeah. What happened out there has all the footprints of a false flag act of terrorism. And if forces had not intervened in between, we might have had the war already. I don't think this is what the Hindu people of India want. I don't think they want war with Pakistan, no. But this is precisely what Israel wants. Israel wants war because Pakistan is a nuclear power, and they do not want any Muslim country to be a nuclear power because they perceive that to be a threat to Israel. But if there is to be, and I'm happy that you raise the subject of peaceful relations between India and Pakistan, it has to be peaceful relations between Islam and Hinduism.
Yeah.
Because that's the heart of the subject. The reason why Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was given the name Mahatma was because he represented the soul of Hinduism, which had been shorn of the accretions which had crept upon it. And he was trying to restore that soul of Hinduism. That's why he was called Mahatma. And if he had not been sacrificed, he had not been assassinated, and if he had continued to rule the independence movement in India, India would not have emerged as a secular republic. No.
Let's discuss this India-Pakistan issue. I think it's interesting because it might be one of the areas where we may have more differences than others.
Okay.
But it would be interesting because we see the global situation in such a similar way to see how this fits inside there. Because I'll tell you my view, which I think would fit into your global view, but when we look at the particular situation, we may have a little debate. But I do not agree with the characterization of the BJP as a warmongering government. I believe the attack that was made in Pakistan in retaliation for. Now you are saying it's a false flag, and so that would change up the whole thing.
Yeah.
But if I take it as a real attack by groups that these are the same types of groups which I believe you have identified as Protestant Islam, right? That these ISIS, Al Qaeda. These terrorist groups that have been using the name of Islam to not only kill their fellow Muslims, but other people as well, and launching these attacks, and that the ISI in Pakistan, I'm sure you're familiar with the discourse of that the ISI has, I think, subverted, I don't know if to say, I won't say Islam itself, but certainly they have a control in the Pakistani state in the way that the deep state in the United States has a control over the United States, which makes people then misunderstand the real human beings below, and we confuse the things going on in the state, both within Pakistan and the United States, but we're talking about Pakistan at the moment. Because my view is that the division between Pakistan and India is part of a longer issue of dividing up the subcontinent. As you may be aware that India right now is the third largest economy in the world when measured by PPP, which is not often noted, but it is the third largest. It's China, the United States, and India. South Asia, meaning Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, I can't remember their total GDP, but they've been growing at 7.1% per year. It's a very important economic region in the world, but they are the least integrated of all areas in the world. It's 20% cheaper for India to do business with Brazil than it is to do with Pakistan. Right? That division of the subcontinent has resulted in an economic impoverishment, which started with the East India Company. I know we're getting into these long things, but we have to make these connections. It started with when the East India Company came in and was propped up the Mughals as they were falling apart, and then they took over the Mughals, and then the Maratha Empire and the Vijayanagar Empire were also taken out, and the Hyderabad Sultanate and so forth. And the East India Company deindustrialized India, looted the wealth. Well, one interesting thing that Shashi Tharoor, the Indian politician, has noted is that under the Mughals, India actually industrialized, and the economic base was not destroyed as what the East India Company, because India was 25% of the world's manufacturing. Cotton, indigo, all sorts of things came from India. It's the largest sink of gold in the world because of all the trade, etc. Now, so this is part of a very long process that is going on, and so I see it as part of a division of the subcontinent that is being perpetuated by the same forces you're talking about, and that there has and that these small little groups being funded and supported by the ISI is part of this divide and rule strategy. What's your response to that?
Well, we certainly differ now on the Pulwama attack, because I see the same footprints of Israel's, the Mossad's false flag terrorist attacks around the world. It's been proliferating for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. And the strategic relationship, in fact, the alliance between Israel and the present government of India is something which cannot be denied.
Yes, and
I am denied, yes.
I am uneasy with that,
yeah,
definitely.
I used to call Pakistan the American Republic of Pakistan.
Exactly.
I used to call them that. And I used to say it was shameful, it was disgraceful, that these are your brothers here in Afghanistan, your own brothers, and you allow NATO to pass through the territory of Pakistan. I don't know how many US dollars you receive for that, so your sons and daughters could study in American universities, and you could have a house, a mansion in Los Angeles and in Miami, and you sell out the Pakistani people. Mm. I denounced them for that all these years. NATO being allowed to pass all through Pakistan to go and kill the innocent Afghan people. Mm-hmm. But I recognize that Imran Khan was an honest cricketer. Mm-hmm. He played the game honestly. Yes. He was a good captain. And I said to myself, it's better to have an honest cricketer as a politician than these crooks who were there before him. Mm-hmm. And so I give Imran the credit of being someone who is honest as a cricketer and as a politician. And he has announced that the government of Pakistan, I don't think he's lying, I have no need to doubt him, that they examined, they searched for evidence, and they found no evidence of what the Indian government was claiming as the responsibility for the attack in India, which killed so many Indian officers. I never laughed at the dead. It's forbidden. I simply laughed at what I considered to be yet another false flag act of terrorism. Now, that if there is to be peace between Hindus and Muslims, I have said this to you before, and I'm repeating it again today. If I were a Hindu, I would hate Islam. It may be a surprise for a Hindu to hear that, And when he hears why, he would agree with me. But Muslims need to wake up. The Hindu world never invited the Muslims to come and rule over them. I never saw the invitation card. If you ever find it, show it to me here. So Islam came to India as an imperialist power. And part of the credentials of a scholar is to show integrity, to call a spade a spade. I am not preaching Islam to please the people, least of all the Pakistani people or the Indian people. I preach to please the Lord God, and therefore I have to be faithful to the truth. And so a scholar has to show integrity and call a spade, regardless of the price he has to pay. And so the first step on the road to reconciliation and peace, and to take the warmongering people and have them pushed aside to the corner, is to denounce Muslim rule over India, Hindu India, as imperialism. Denounce it, apologize to the Hindu people, and do the same thing for what the Ottoman Empire did to the Orthodox Christians, except that the Orthodox Christians suffered far more than the Hindus did, because the Ottoman Empire was so brutal. The Mughals did not do half the things that the Ottomans did. So if there is a government in Pakistan which has a backbone made of steel, then they'll do the right thing, and they'll begin the process of reconciliation, not with negotiation between this foreign ministry and that foreign ministry, but taking the bull by the horns and apologizing to the Hindu world, which is what they should have done at the time of the Khilafat movement, apologizing to the Hindu world for Muslim rule over India, which was not acceptable, not compatible with Islam. It was imperialism. And after you have done that, then you can proceed to try to resolve the problem of Kashmir, and I hope it can be done.
Yes, yes. I think ultimately we are definitely on the same page, you know, and even if we may dispute certain details or whatever, and that is to be determined by facts, and then we take it and we process it and put it in the larger movement. Yeah. But I think that we understand the direction.
You notice how fast the time is moving? I promised our viewing audience we're going to have a fascinating conversation today, and we are having it, but time is moving fast.
Yes. Now, I'll tell you the way I started to piece world history together in a different way. Right? So obviously when you are at university, the liberal progressive epistemology, the reading of history, is taken for granted, right? So you start off with that. That's the taken for granted thing in the Western world, the Western education system, which we have and which I've been part of, and so forth. So, but then you have a critical view from Marxists, from third world nationalists, and these sorts of people, and I started off in that path, and because I became critical of the dominant view, because the poverty and war and exploitation in the rest of the world did not square with the dominant narrative, right? That about progress of the West. Leading the world to a better place, and so as I was exploring those issues, I came across through various things an idea of the world system having a 5,000-year-old history that is connected, where it started off with Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley civilizations, and then China, about 5,000 years ago, with the circulation. Cowrie shells is, in fact, the first global currency. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. And Maldives was the source of the world's cowrie shells. And it was in currency right up to the time of slavery, and I find it
Which slavery?
sad. African, the
Western?
slave trade.
Western slave trade.
Yes, it was also part of the Arab slave trade, I am assuming, but certainly part of the transatlantic slavery. And I'm always saddened when I see African nationalists using the cowrie shell as a symbol. You see it, they put it in their locks, in their dreadlocks, and sometimes on their wallets and belts, because that was the currency used. The Chinese symbol for money is the cowrie shell. It's a block with a line and these lines between.
We're going to defer now on another subject.
Yes, I know.
Yes, we're going to defer on another subject because when Jesus, Nabi Isa alayhi salam, went into the temple, which will be 2,000 years ago,
That's right.
and he found the money changers in the temple doing something,
Yeah.
and he objected to it. He considered it wasn't kosher, it wasn't halal, it was forbidden, evil. And he cursed them. And he turned over their tables and he chased them out of the temple. Today, he'd be called a terrorist.
Yeah.
And he said, you've taken the house of God and transformed it into a den of thieves.
Yes.
There was something in the use of money in that temple which he considered to be theft.
Correct.
Theft. What was the money? It wasn't shells.
No, it wasn't. No. Yeah. So when I said that it was used right up to this 17th century, it was not the dominant currency, because gold and silver had displaced cowrie shells thousands of years before.
Okay.
But it was still it was still in limited use up to the transatlantic slavery. But certainly gold and silver.
The Hindu knows that money ordained by the Hindu religion is gold and silver.
That's
The
right.
Christian knows that. The Muslim knows that. I guess the Buddhist, certainly the Jew knows that, because Israel already has gold and silver as its legal tender.
And before gold and silver was used, I was just saying, cowrie shells were in fact used. And then gold and silver had displaced. Roman coins and Chinese coins were among the first coinage using those metals. But that's a different subject. But it's related in the sense that it shows the ancient nature of the global economy. That's the main point I want to talk about.
The world systems.
Yes, the world system, and that still exists. The circulation of money, and it has been expanding until the Europeans were brought into it late. And it was through the Spanish acquisition of the New World territories, where they got all this gold, that they were finally able to give something to the Chinese and Indians and be part of it. So there have been people who have been trying to manipulate this world economy. And it has been actually very deliberate and conscious in many ways. And it's only among a tiny group of people who understand that this world economy even exists in the first place. Because most people don't even think on that level. And as I started to explore that is how I came on understanding the growth of empires, the fall of empires, the flow of money, the flow of goods and services, and how it's all connected in the long view. And that is how I came across you, because it seemed like your research was following the exact same logic. So I'd just like your comment on that.
Yeah, the very same thing you were saying to me, Dr. Kirk Meighoo, and you are a political scientist. I got an email from a Swiss scholar. His name was Piero San Giorgio. I don't know whether he'll listen to this broadcast. And he wrote a book on preparing for economic collapse. And he said to me, Sheikh, I can't understand. I'm a secular economist. You are a Muslim eschatologist. how come we've come to the same conclusions? And then eventually he became my friend. We had a joint seminar in Geneva a few years ago. The fact is that truth is one.
That's right.
There's only one truth. And if we're now taken the discussion to political economy, and yes, there are forces at work for a long, long time to try to unify the world as one world order. And Pax Britannica did not emerge dropping from the sky. It was part and parcel of the plan of one world order, so that eventually all of mankind will be united in one world under one world government, one central bank and one currency. Emmanuel Wallerstein does not have an eschatology. And that's why, while I have benefited from reading Emmanuel Wallerstein, and my sister constantly sends me his essays, I recognize that they do not have an eschatology, so they don't have the big picture.
Well, he has a different kind. He's seeing that the capitalist world system is now dying,
yes,
and what is going to emerge, he's open-ended about it. He hopes a socialist world system will come from it, or maybe there'll be chaos. So that is his sort of eschatology. But they do have one. They don't admit it and they don't understand it, but they have one.
Okay. Well, when we speak of eschatology, we talk about religion.
That's right.
A branch of religious knowledge, yes. And our view is that the disappearance of gold and silver as money is part and parcel of the process of enslaving mankind. What's your response?
I think I've not explored it in that way, but it's something I'm very much open to, because I do think that, I mean, certainly in 1972, that was a critical moment when the US dollar was linked from gold, and that unleashed all the sort of inflation, the inflationary currency, paper money worth nothing except a mere idea, all the speculation, the derivatives which caused the crash, and which has allowed debt to reach unfathomable numbers. You cannot count to 1 billion. A person cannot count to 1 billion in his lifetime. And now we're reaching trillions. These are beyond human human capacity, and it is unpayable debt we are saddled with in the world. And there's going to be a crash, and it's going to have, and in all this, there are tremendous manipulations of wealth. So I suppose I see it in that way, but I didn't articulate it in that way.
Okay, we got only 5 minutes left now. If we are to conclude with a very important agreement, and that is that the modern political economy is designed to enslave the world.
Yeah.
And the enslavement of the world is on Israel's behalf. Those who are allies of Israel are on the side of the oppressor, on the wrong side of history. Those who stand up against the oppressor are on the right side of history. And therefore, Venezuela is on the right side of history. And those who are trying to put a Guaido onto Venezuela, a regime change in Venezuela on behalf of the United States of America, you have to forgive me. Sometimes my anger gets too much of me. I call them puppy dogs of the Yankees. Yeah?
Right.
Puppy dogs of the Yankees, yeah. We have to recognize that there's a new slavery coming upon the world. Politics is a part of it. Economics is a part of it. Therefore, political economy is important. And money is a part of it, the monetary system. And we have to try to find a way and means to get out of this Guantanamo, this monetary Guantanamo that's coming with only cryptocurrencies and bitcoins and eventually one central bank and one currency for all the world. How do we get out of that?
Now, Bitcoin, I understand your critique of Bitcoin, and it does make sense. But I've also understood Bitcoin in terms of its move away from central control.
Mm-hmm.
You know, its move away from central banks, its move away from governments. And yet, I see a fundamental contradiction, because you need the computer system and the internet and all that for it to work. So, and who is going to be controlling the internet? And especially now that the internet is going to be fragmenting, you know, China has been building up theirs, Russia is now building up theirs, because the internet now is being recognized. It's recognized by these countries that it has been used as a tool for spying and control of flow of information and all these sorts of things. So I think that the idea behind the cryptocurrency of being free from central banks and government is actually liberating. But that might be an illusion because of the computer systems on which it's based.
We got 2 minutes left. I think every Hindu viewing this program, if he's not already buying gold and silver coins or gold and silver bars and bullion, keeping them safe, would start to do it now. Every Christian viewing this program, if you've not been buying gold and silver coins or bullion or bars and keeping them safe, you should start doing it now. And every Muslim should do the same thing. This is the first response we have. It's a micro response, I know, but it's better than nothing.
Yes, yes. And in this second, I know we're out of time, so I would just like to say in the second program, what I think would be interesting to explore is, because you talk about the state of Israel, and it's a very sensitive topic, especially in the West, and all the anti-Semitism charges and all these things, I think that we could explore that, because people would think of it, well, you're a Muslim, you're instinctively anti-Semitic and anti-Jew, but I don't think that that's where you're coming from, and I think that it's something we could explore.
If a Jew stands up against the oppressor, he is my brother. If a Hindu stands up against the oppressor, he is my brother. We're now out of time for today. We're going to now record for next week. I won't be here with you next week, but we have a pre-recorded session, which will be a continuation of today's very, very interesting and fascinating conversation between myself and my guest, Dr. Kirk Meighoo, the Professor of Sciences. And thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.